I love getting to talk with you on my show every day. But when the cameras stop rolling, there's still so much to say. Head over to the Dr. Oz podcast to hear the rest of the conversation with some of the most compelling experts. Listen and follow on the iHeartRadio app or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Ow.
This is Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Good morning. Good morning, my friends. This is Dr. David Vitko, your host for Enjoy Incredible Health. We got another exciting Sunday morning for you here, and hopefully got some great stuff to share. I think I do. And as usual, I have a lot more to share than I have time, but we're going to get through as much as we can. So I'm your host, Dr. David Vitko. I'm a chiropractic physician with over 34 years experience practicing in Columbiana, Ohio, treating your friends and neighbors and helping them to become healthier. And I think in that time I've learned quite a bit, and I'd like to share it with you here today. So all my professional accolades, I can add now maybe clairvoyant. Am I clairvoyant? You know, a week before, 2 weeks ago, I was talking about how great Columbiana was. Wasn't I? Everybody remember that show? And, this past week, wow, we had just the announcement, what was it, Friday or Saturday? Friday, I believe it was, that Columbiana was voted the nicest place in the United States by Reader's Digest magazine. Is that incredible? I think that's a huge tribute to Columbiana and to the great town that I know it is, and I've known for years. When Denise and I first moved to town, it's interesting that I think we were maybe in the office, and I used to get the newspaper every day, and until they raised the price to 50 cents a copy, it kind of ticked me off, and I'm like, I'm going to quit buying it. It took me about 5 years to quit buying it after that, but so now the paper's online for the most part, but I actually bought my first copy, the weekend paper, yesterday. If you get a chance, pick one up of the weekend edition of the Morning Journal. It's got a great article in there. The headline is Columbiana, nicest place in these United States. But I remember when we first started in practice in town, I was reading in the paper one morning, and I commented to my wife, Nisi, and I said, I know that we picked the right town. And she said, well, how is that? How do you know? Well, I said, because in the police reports, the only report we had was a truck was making the turn and went slightly off the road and left ruts in a yard. And that was the police report for that day. So I said, I know we're in the right town. I'm not reading reports of all kinds of crime and holdups and drug busts. And yeah, we've had our issues with drugs and things like that and the occasional criminal, but, certainly far less than most towns. And we have a fantastic police force in Columbiana and fire and our public utility and the people that run the town are all great. There's always complaints, here and there. Oh, we have this problem. You're not taking care of it, blah, blah, blah. We always get that kind of thing. But for the most part, our town is really run very well. Columbiana is very well run, and I can honestly say, and I don't know really any of these guys all that well. I know Lance Willard that runs the town a little bit. I used to know Keith Chamberlain pretty well that used to run it. These guys all have their heart in the right place, and they all want to do what's best for the community. And I think that's the bottom line on helping a town to run well. So that aside, because that's not the story here. The story here is, how did Columbiana get recognized as the nicest place in the United States? Well, it turns out a lady named Mary Lou Wilson actually nominated Columbiana for this award. And I believe it's her grandson who was involved with the theater, Columbiana Theater, and Crown Theater Productions. And I know some of the people there, too. Don Arthurs and his wife, Dawn, as well, renovated the theater or restored the theater and did a beautiful job and really took a leap of faith in doing what they were doing. And they have deep faith. I know that. And they really created a cornerstone in the town out of this thing to where I think goodwill grows, it is... It began, I think, as a way to still keep the theater going and show movies and things in town. And that kind of did that for a while. And I think they still show some movies there. But the theater, Crown Theater, has turned into something much more than they ever thought it would, I believe, in that they put on these plays, and the plays have encompassed a place for people with special needs to be actors in the plays. And it's really rewarding to see the response that we get from these people and their families and the people that come to see the shows and things like that. It is deeply rewarding. And I'm not positive exactly of the details, but I believe this is Mary Lou Wilson's intent was to say, hey, look, the Crown Theater has done great things, and, you should take a look at our town. And our town has many more things going for it. Columbiana really is a gem. And, I know there are other towns in the area that are very nice, too. I grew up in New Springfield, and so Youngstown, Columbiana, it's funny, growing up in New Springfield, I have vivid memories of Columbiana from, maybe I was 5 years old, 6 years old, going to see the movie Bambi at the Columbiana Theater. And I thought I was in the city when I went to Columbiana. New Springfield is a little crossroads, and, my grandparents had a farm, and all my dad and his brothers all built houses on the front of the farm. And, my closest friend, I had friends who were a couple houses away, but still, that was, a quarter mile away or so. My closest friend was a mile away. And, you kind of lived rurally. And when you went to Columbiana to see a movie, it was like going to the city. So I have recollections of the theater clear back then. And I can tell you that it is a phenomenal asset. And my hat's off to the Arthurs and the people, Deb Solomon, I know, who's really instrumental in keeping Crown Theater going and promoting it and things like that. And it's just amazing what they've done with that and how great that is for the community. And that kind of was a cornerstone. And I believe that is one way that fosters this caring attitude and this helpfulness that you really find throughout the area. Not just Columbiana, even surrounding towns. And yeah, I'm a little partial because this is where I grew up. But even growing up, I knew that even people, in Youngstown and the area, for all our problems with crime and things like that, those are the things we hear most about. And it's ridiculous. We have so many good things that happen in our area. And it's really nice to see Columbiana get this tribute to them by Reader's Digest, a national entity, and we got national recognition out of that, as is well deserved. It is well deserved. So when you drive through Columbiana now, you'll see a banner over Main Street that says, that basically Columbiana voted nicest place in the United States. It got a little tribute to Crown Theater on there, and I think rightfully so. These people. It's not like they did some one special thing to get, recognition. This is everyday life. These people do good things for other people every day. And this is what, I tell you folks all the time, and maybe I miss it every once in a while on a show, but do something good for somebody, and you'll be amazed at the things that happen out of that. And try to do that. Try to make it a daily practice. And, I hate to be, sit here and preach at anybody. I don't mean to do that because I don't think I'm, at that high standard where I should be. But to me, everyone I know gets this reward, this good feeling when you do good things. And so this is an outward reward that they get, from Reader's Digest and the national recognition, but it's what you feel inside. And I know that's what all these people who do this day in and day out with, Crown Theater and the other things that go on in town. They mentioned the brewery down there, Bird Dog. is it Bird Dog? Birdfish. Yeah, Birdfish Brewery. That, they donate their tip jars to a different charity or whatever every month, something like that. And they've made big donations. And you see that everywhere you go. I don't mean to leave anybody out. I apologize if I am, but there's so many good people in Columbiana, and in the area. But it is rightfully so that they got this award in Columbiana. And they said there were 1,000 submissions, and it was narrowed down to 50 finalists. So Columbiana is at least 1 out of 1,000. How about that? And I think it's 1 in a million as far as I'm concerned. I've lived there for 34 years, and it's a great place. And I mentioned to you before, I think this weekend is Christmas in the Woods, which is a great thing down at Columbiana. Don't mark my word on that, but I'm pretty sure it is. I noticed the traffic this week. And, we have a lot of really great things that happen in that town. I mentioned the lake, the renovation of the lake, and Pat Tingle, who put up a lot of the money for that. Just a amazing commitment to move the town forward and to, share the love with other people in the area. And you really should come into town and see it. Columbiana is really a gem, and I'm so proud to call that my home. And I think there's a lot to be had there. If you're looking for a place to live, I can recommend no better. We have a great school system. All the surrounding school systems are also great school systems, mostly new buildings, wonderful teachers, good curricula, and the kids do well, when they go on to college. It's a tribute to the education systems as well. Most of our roads are good as they can be in Ohio. We know how that goes. But anyway, so enough of laying it on thick for Columbiana. But Columbiana, the town deserves it. And, man, I'll tell you, they're always doing something great. Oh, I forgot to mention, we have this great new water plant in Columbiana, too. I mean, our water's always been pretty good, but it's phenomenal. The modern water plant that they put into place now for water treatment for your drinking water and things like that, phenomenal. And I just think that Columbiana, the people there are always working to make things better and always looking forward and looking ahead. And by the same token, we look backward. You look at the tribute to the Firestone family, to Firestone Farms, to the park. It's just a phenomenal place, all in all. You're missing out if you don't come down there and visit us. Okay, so that aside, so let's get on to a little bit of health here. So, I've been studying for many years to reach conclusions I now have regarding correct diet and its effect on human health. And I think, I've boiled this all down to, I think, what is the most important factor. Diet and exercise and physiology and anatomy and all this can be so confusing because there are so many conflicting and confusing factors involved. Sometimes it's hard to figure out the basis of what's correct. So in science, it's always best to reduce the number of variables in a experiment. So in other words, you want to go after, one thing and figure one thing out that you can pin your hat on for sure and say, this is true. And honestly, folks, in all my studies in all the years and my recent studies on cancer, which have been just extensive to say the least, it is amazing to me that how complex health is in general. And so when you hear studies where people actually, try to boil things down to a statement, and you get these researchers that make a statement that might lead people down one path or another, that's scary to me. That is scary to me because there are variations in all the things that go into those studies that maybe are not totally accounted for. Now, researchers like to think that they control all these, but they don't. There are so many variables involved in every study. It's so hard to draw a single conclusion especially something that's all-encompassing, a big conclusion. So like the one I mentioned last week about the scientists who basically said it's okay to keep eating the same amount of red meat you always ate. And, there are mistakes in that whole picture. And I can tell you that quite possibly there are some conflicts involved as well. One of the scientists for sure had ties to the meat industry in the past and the financial ties to the meat industry. And that should throw up red flags right away. I mean, it's hard to find, you'd have to get Jesus Christ to do the studies in order to not have any variables and no conflicts. But I've often said if Christ himself were president of the United States, they would rip him apart and tear him down, because that's just the nature of humanity, I guess, is that we can't accept having that anyone would know and have, any kind of credibility that goes against what we believe. So in this study, though, there was at least one conflict, and that was a scientist who had ties to the meat industry. But this study basically said, we think it's probably good for people the right approach, for people to continue eating the same amount of red meat that they always have. And we see that as being 3 to 4 servings a week. Well, I can tell you there's a conflict right there, because I don't know anybody I know very few people outside of people who really try to eat lots more fruits and vegetables, the people I counsel in my office mostly. But I don't know anybody who limits their red meat consumption to 3 to 4 servings a week. First of all, a serving is, if you ate a hamburger, you're probably getting at least 2 servings. And, certainly a steak is at least 2 or 3 servings. And so I really think that puts this whole thing on shaky ground to begin with. This is a European study, and maybe they do a lot less meat in Europe than we do in the United States. But I think if we look at the people's diets in the United States, we do maybe 3 to 4 servings of meat a day in this country. And I think that's a fair assessment. And so if you're comfortable, if you've read this study or you've read the synopsis of this, the conclusions of this study, and you're taking out of it that, I can keep eating the same amount of red meat as I always did. And by the way, they include processed and like cold cuts and things like that in there. And we should be very careful with that, because the processed meats are the ones that get us in trouble. There's a lot of additives in there, a lot of preservatives. And those are not so good for us, in addition to the high fat content of red meat or processed meats in general. But when we look at this study, we really need to keep this in context and say, if they're saying 3 to 4 servings a week is okay to continue, that's actually a big reduction for most people. And I believe that that's probably true. And maybe we should limit that to 1 to 2 servings a week. But I think that the bigger picture, folks, in our diet is sugar intake and possibly salt intake because of processed foods. And I think processed foods are kind of the culprit. And so when I was talking about taking variables out to figure out, what the real answer is in some of these studies, it's pretty hard to boil it down to red meat. Because people eat red meat also tend to have a propensity toward other fatty foods, high-fat foods other than meat. Maybe dairy, which I include dairy in with red meat in my assessment of how people eat. But things like sugar intake, and people who tend to eat red meat, probably half of those people, I know I'm going to get some feedback on this, but probably half those people also are sugar addicts or carb addicts. And so, like for instance, if you get up in the morning and you're craving something sweet, like you need a donut or, you need sugary cereal or something, you're a carb addict. There's no question about it. And what you eat in the morning is what is going to stimulate your appetite for the rest of the day. And a good friend of mine, a medical doctor, has said this many times, and I agree completely with it. When you eat something like donuts or even a bagel or toast or something for breakfast, you're going to crave carbs all day. That's the nature of it. Cereal is all carbs. I love a bowl of cereal once in a while, and I usually have something healthy, but it's still high in carbs. And if you don't consider that, carbs are a form of sugar, basically, because it's the simplest form of energy we take in. And I'm very conscious of that right now with having been diagnosed with cancer and fighting that on my own, basically, kind of foregoing any kind of the medical slash and burn treatment. But I'm conscious of that, and I limit how much cereal I eat. I do occasionally have something, occasionally that's all I really want is just something easy to eat. And so, but I'm still conscious of the carbs in it because that essentially is a form of sugar that you're taking into your body, and your body handles that very easily. But when you feed your body too many carbs, that's something that cancer definitely thrives on, is that high carbohydrate intake, this simple sugar intake that the body likes. Now, there are complex carbs that are good for us. I always make sure I eat some green salads and some steamed vegetables and things like that. Been a little harder for me lately. I don't crave those things the way I used to, but I push myself to eat those things because I know they are things that my body needs. They supply the nutrients, the complex carbohydrates, the good nutrients your body needs, along with energy that it needs. And so, that's the direction that I try to work. So when you see these studies, be careful of the conclusions that you draw or that you let them draw for you, because it may be guided by something more than just altruistic science where they want to, give you the basis of truth. It may be guided by more than that, and it might be some money or funding involved there. And so, I wanted to touch base on that again from last week. So I have drawn conclusions in my life from many, many years of study. And the one conclusion that I've drawn, and I've spoken with other people who are science-minded and who look at nutrition heavily, and I've drawn from the people I've had as guests on here on the show that I highly respect, and even scientists who maybe lean the high-fat content direction. And the consensus of opinion, which is a scary thing, consensus doesn't necessarily mean that it's scientifically proven, but the agreement seems to be across the board that the most important factor in diet is how the energy efficiency it creates in the human body. And the most important thing we can do is to have a highly efficient system. And when we come back after break here, I'm going to talk more about that, and I'll take some phone calls too. If you want to call in after the break, folks, wait till after the break, 330-729-9977. That's 330-729-9977. I'll be happy to take your calls, and we can talk about nutrition or health, or if you have a question about cancer, those kinds of things. I'm not putting myself out there as a cancer expert by any stretch of the imagination, but when your life depends on it, you do dig into it pretty deeply, pretty fast. And so I do have some opinions on that I'm happy to share with you. And so this is Dr. David Vitko. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health. And when we come back in just a couple of minutes, we're going to go on and learn more about health. Thanks for listening, folks.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Alrighty, we'll head back into the second half of the show here, and hopefully we can impart some wisdom to you folks. I'd like to get onto this message of energy efficiency because, again, in all my studies, in all my self-experimentation, and all my understanding of how diet affects health, both directly and indirectly, it boils down to this, folks. we are a glorified energy conversion system. Like every other life form on the planet, like every furnace, like every car engine, every form of energy conversion you can think of on Earth, we are a glorified energy conversion system. And when I say glorified, in my opinion, we have been designed spectacularly. And every day I go through this thought in thanking God for this incredible design, this healing design that is in the body. Our immune system is second to none. And the best science and medical doctors can do is to kind of fool around the fringes of that thing and try to tweak it a little bit, because nobody truly understands how it works. Oh, they put all kind of little chemical formulas into it and names for different reactions and things like this, and these processes that happen in a cascade of things that happen in a response to bacteria or cancer or whatever else. But they don't understand it. They really, truly don't understand the whole thing and how it works as a whole. And once again, there we go. We understand little tidbits of it, but to look at the bigger picture, pretty tough. And so I see that as the difference between people into natural health and people into modern medicine, is that in natural health, most people in natural health try to tweak the whole system or stoke the whole system. We try to improve the way the whole immune system works by doing some basic things to help support it. And medicine tries to alter chemical reactions to get certain changes in that immune response. And that can be powerful, don't get me wrong, but that also comes with great risk. And we've seen that in people who have been treated with these immune-stoking drugs for cancer. And some of these studies that were done, some of these trials that were done, the early trials, had to be stopped because people were dying as a result of this. And nobody saw it coming. Nobody said, oh, this is dangerous. But when you tinker with those kinds of things, there is inherent risk. There is the possibility that something is going to go wrong. And when you don't understand the whole cascade of events and, when you change something in that chemical reaction, who knows what the outcome is going to be over time. And just from personal experience, I know of 2 cases of people who were treated for cancer with the immune response drugs, and things went poorly after they got into it. Now, I'm not saying that maybe that's not a good way to go. Maybe these people didn't have much choice because they were to that point where they had to do something drastic, but things didn't go well. And so, when you're pulling out all the stops, there's risk involved. So, but one thing I know is that the energy efficiency model in the body it's tweaking the energy efficiency is the best thing we can do, because we can change the way the body does things. And I'll tell you that if your energy efficiency is high and is good, most of the time your immune response is going to also be very strong. No guarantees, because there are certainly exceptions to everything. But so the best thing we can do is to make our body as energy efficient as possible. And that's within all our capability. We all have that capability to improve our energy efficiency. And there can be little caveats in that whole thing, like the iron deficiency thing that I spoke to you about last week or so. Like I have a little bit of internal bleeding, obviously, from my esophagus. And so my iron got low. And until I got my iron up, my energy didn't come back. Now, my energy is pretty good now. It's not perfect, but it's way better. So when I talk about energy efficiency in the body and the energy that you have day in and day out, they're not really the same thing. Energy efficiency in your body is that your body can take the food you eat and turn it into work, whether that's work in your immune system or whether that's work that you can do physically, which equates to your energy levels every day in many ways. That is the basis of our overall energy efficiency in the body. And it is the quality of the food that is most important. I will tell you this right now, that you can actually achieve a higher energy efficiency and possibly the optimal energy efficiency with nearly any diet that you use. Now, there's a lot of people out there going, oh, that's not true. Well, it is true, but you have to keep in mind that there are also other things involved other than just the energy efficiency, like bowel function. So people who are into the high-fat diet, like the Atkins-type diet and even more strict, will tell you that they have much more energy. And I think that type of diet can promote a higher level of energy that you have during the day, but maybe there are systems in the body that are bogged down by that system or by that method. And I'll tell you one for sure, and that is your bowel function. There is no question that when you go on a high-fat diet, you better do something to stimulate better bowel function because it's not going to work right. And that alone will bog you down because there's nothing harder on the body than keeping toxic material in your bowel for days at a time. It's one of the reasons a high meat-based diet is a problem for us, because red meat is known. The digestive process alone can maintain a red meat meal in your bowel for 2 to 3 days for digestive purposes. And because of that, that is something that creates possibly a toxic load in the body. And, not to be gross or anything, but, if you are passing foul gas and you have a high meat diet, I'll tell you that's why. Because that meat is rotting in your bowel. And, getting it through there quick is the answer. So how do you fix that? Well, if you're going to eat some red meat, you should eat twice as many vegetables with it. And the thought is that, if we're going to eat a serving of red meat, it should be about the size of maybe a half a deck of cards or up to 3/4 of a deck of cards. And if you do that and you eat a pile of vegetables twice that size with it, it's going to propel that through your bowel much faster because you have fiber with it. The inherent problem with meat itself, whether it's processed meat or something that's grass-fed or whatever, the inherent problem is there's no fiber in it. And humans need fiber. Our bowel is 32 feet long. A cat, which is a true carnivore, their bowel is approximately the length of their body. And when they eat one day, it's out by the next day, basically. It does not stand unless they're eating a high-carb diet and you're feeding them just dry food. And by the way, folks, if you have cats, I have cats, and I've paid close attention to this. Cats need moist food. If you feed your cats all dry food, they're going to have problems. And so you want your cat to be healthy. Yeah, sometimes it stinks. Sometimes it's a pain dealing with it. But they really need a high-quality moist food. Now, pay attention to the moist food you buy, too, because a lot of those moist foods, like the big brand names, unless it's the real high-quality stuff, oftentimes it'll say the grains will be the first ingredient in it. Pay attention to the first ingredient in it and put your reading glasses on when you look at these cans, because I swear they have little tiny people print these things or something, because I don't know how they could get the print that small. But if you put on your reading glasses and read the ingredients on these pet foods, not just cats, but dogs and other pets too, read the ingredients. If it starts out with grain, or grain is the second ingredient or even third, there's probably too much grain. And most animals are not designed to eat grains, especially not carnivores. Cats, dogs, there's probably a little more room for error with dogs, but cats certainly need a moist, meat-based diet. That is the food they were designed for. Just like humans were designed primarily for fruits, vegetables, and we tolerate the other things. And actually, we may need a little bit of meat from time to time. But, our diet has gotten to the point where that's the primary thing we eat in this country. Meat and carbohydrates. I think modern humans, basically, because of the way we live now, modern humans crave carbohydrates, the simple carbohydrates. And if you're somebody who's addicted to donuts or coffee cakes or cupcakes or, whatever, donuts, that's simple carbs, folks. When you eat that stuff, it begets the need for more carbs because your body craves more and more of that, and that's not the way to go. You're going to gain weight, you're going to get diabetes, you're going to end up getting cancer. There's all kinds of things that can happen down the road from that are not good. And so if you got to take those kinds of things out of your diet. And think about the fast food places. I think about one of the places that I like to get coffee. I'll get a cup of coffee in the morning. Everything they have, other than the meat sandwiches, are all based around carbs. Donuts, coffee cakes, bagels. It's all simple carbs. And those kinds of things really are not good for us. And especially when you eat them on a daily basis. You need to decide if you're going to have something like that once in a great while, it's okay, but you better have the willpower to keep yourself from going on and doing it every day, because the worst thing you can do is develop a habit where you do that every day. Like if you're stopping for a cup of coffee in the morning and you always get a donut with it, it's just one donut, and I just get the plain old-fashioned donut, and that's not going to help. You do that every day, and you're building a bad habit into your diet, and your body, your health will reflect that in time. Habits are the key to everything in our health, because habits are what your body is exposed to day in and day out every day. And when the body gets used to doing a certain thing, and that food's always there, especially when that food has bad things in it, like sugar. I said this last week. Our government has said it's okay to have up to 10% of your calories from table sugar every day. So this might be in added like sugary cereals or even drinks. I've seen these milk products that have tons of sugar in them. And, when you eat a regular dose of sugar, it's like dosing your body with a drug. It really is. And when you do it every day, if it's something that isn't necessarily good for us, somewhere along the line you're going to pay a price for it. I promise you. And you're not going to like what that price is. And that price may even put your health out of your control. And that's the kind of thing that happens when cancer comes along, or, something like irritable bowel, which most people could probably manage if they would change their diet and can probably eliminate eventually. But some of these autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid, I've seen rheumatoid disappear in people, rheumatoid arthritis, just by changing their diet and being consistent and being persistent day in and day out and doing good dietary habits to replace the ones that got them in that situation to begin with. By the way, if you've got rheumatoid and you're a carb addict, I can tell you can literally change your world by doing a couple things. And you go make sure you're getting plenty of fruits and vegetables, cut those simple carbohydrates out, the donuts and, candy and things like that, and cut back on the red meat. You don't have to eliminate it, but if you cut back, maybe go to the white meats. Over time, over 6-8 months, you can literally change that picture and eliminate the inflammatory factors in your body and get rid of that disease. It's powerful, powerful stuff, folks. Hey, I'm putting all my marbles in that bag for my cancer right now. Do you think I would do that if I wasn't thoroughly convinced that there are ways to stoke the body's immune system to fight it better? I am thoroughly convinced. I've seen it in people. When you see it, you believe it, especially when you know the changes that were made to produce it. And when I see it in my patients, I know they're not being perfect. I know basically some people come in and lie to me from time to time. I know that happens. That's human nature. They're cheating a little bit here and there, but it is that basic change that's necessary and to persist with it over time. This is Dr. David Vitko. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health, and come back and we'll finish up in just a few minutes here. I only got a couple minutes left, but I got a couple things to say.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Alrighty, we only have a few minutes left, and so I want to drive a point home. This whole thing about carbohydrates and fats in the American diet. Folks, if you eat fast food every day, you're falling right into this trap, because the carbohydrates and the saturated animal fats, like in deep fried foods, are the biggest problems that we have in health. They are things that keep drawing us back. They are simple carbohydrates that are easily digested, and our body learns to crave those. And actually, cancer craves those. So if you have the beginnings of cancer, that feeds it. So in the morning here lately, I'm really watching my diet, and I'm thinking, oh man, I could go for a donut with my cup of coffee, which I don't do generally, but that would be a good, and I think, why would I do that? That's like telling the cancer, hey, look, I got a new load of food coming in for you, because that's what that sugar is, and more than anything. But when you eat at fast food restaurants regularly, they cater to that carbohydrate and a fatty tasting meal, and that's what keeps you coming back. And you easily digest that, and quickly you need that satisfaction again, and you're drawn back to it. You can do the same thing at home with the way you cook at home if you're not careful. And so we really need to look at the basis of the food that we're eating and figure out ways to improve that. Increase substantially your fruit and vegetable consumption, and make that your primary focus, and those other things should be secondary. If you're going to have a little fatty stuff, you're going to occasionally, hey, the holidays are coming up, you're going to have a piece of pumpkin pie here in the next month or so. You're going to eat, most people are probably going to eat a pie, basically, is what it comes down to, with whipped cream. So, but we need to, what you do once in a while is not going to do a hill of beans of damage to you, unless you're diabetic or something. You go into diabetic shock. But if the average person, holidays are to celebrate, have a piece of pie, enjoy the holidays, have that gravy on your mashed potatoes. But, learn to control those things and only have them at unusual times, holidays. Look, for more information, folks, visit the website of the show, which is drvitkohealth.com. That's drvitko health.com. Or, look me up on Facebook, because my office website and the website for this show, Enjoy Incredible Health, on Facebook are great places. I post things every week on there that are things that you want to read. So drvitkohealth.com, and look me up on Facebook. This is Dr. David Vitko. Thanks for visiting with me, folks, and I look forward to next week. Have a great week.